Stalkers are terrifying, and today I'll be reading another batch of real-life stalker stories from LetsNeverMeet subreddit, the latest of which I found particularly disturbing. My mom basically got kind of forced into a friendship with this female. She has an adult son who I have also become friends with. The very first day this female met my mum, she immediately opened up and told her that her granddaughter passed away 9 months ago and that her son found her lying dead in her bed. She said the cause of death was SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, which honestly should have been the first red flag because the granddaughter was around 4 years old, I think, and SIDS only happens to infants. If anything, it would be sudden unexplained death in children, which is extremely rare. Anyway, this female is very clingy and constantly inserts herself into my mum's plans. She talks about how she envies my mum, and she compliments my 4-year-old sister a lot. She compares her to her dead granddaughter non-stop, and she even sniffed her hair once. Obviously, this all weirded my mum out, so she told me, "My intuition is telling me to keep my family away from her." I try to be understanding because I know grief can do strange things to people, and she is also neurodivergent, so maybe she struggles with social cues and boundaries. A couple hours ago, I was sitting with her son, and he was showing me pictures of his family back in Utah. He scrolls to a photo of his niece, and at this point, he does not know that I already know she died. My mum warned me not to say anything triggering, because his mum claims he has PTSD and struggles with the death, which is wild because the mum constantly talks about the granddaughter and shows pictures of her, and it clearly ruins his mood every time. He sees the picture and says, "Yeah, this is my niece. She died. Everything went downhill when she died." I comfort him, acting surprised since he does not know I already knew. Then he adds that he found her dead, but then he says, "I found her dead in the bathtub, and that does not match what the mom told my mom at all. She said he found the child dead in bed, lying upside down, so now the stories do not match." More context. The mom grew up in a Mormon cult and said she was running from someone when she moved from Utah to Oregon, but would not say who. She also told us she watched her daughter's kids a lot, but after the granddaughter died, Child Protective Services got involved and they took away the grandson, the other child. My question is, why would Child Protective Services remove the other child if the death was truly SIDS, which is out of anyone's control? It does not make sense to me. If the child actually died in the bathtub due to lack of supervision, that sounds like neglect, and that would explain why Child Protective Services removed the other kid. Between the conflicting stories, the Child Protective Services involvement, and the way she acts toward my little sister, my mom and I both feel really uncomfortable. Are we overthinking this, or does this seem genuinely concerning? Hello, this one is long, so sorry in advance. I do need to give a bit of context. I am a 22-year-old female, but this story happened when I was 21. I live in a small town and I work in a pub in the town centre, like 2 pubs, 2 small shops and a bank. When I walk home, I pass one of the shops and there is a small bus shelter next to it. Buses run about once an hour, but none run after 8 p.m. After that, it is just residential housing. Then my house near the end of the road. From my job to my house, it is about an 8-minute walk. My town is usually dead after 10 p.m. because everything is closed. I genuinely thought it was relatively safe. I never had a problem walking home alone. This happened on New Year's Eve going into New Year's Day, so the pubs were open later. I finished my shift at about 1:30 a.m. and me, my boss, my boyfriend and 2 other co-workers went to the pub next door for a drink before going home. It was about 2:30 a.m. when I realized the time and decided I needed to get home. My boyfriend lives on the other side of town, and I was not staying at his that night. My boss insisted on driving me home, and my boyfriend insisted on walking me home, but I kept insisting I was fine. It is literally less than 10 minutes. After a lot of pushback, I told them I was walking home. I actually enjoy walking without headphones, having a cigarette after a shift, because it is so silent and peaceful. I did not pass anyone until I got near the shop. As I got closer, I realized there was a man sitting on the bench in the bus stop. Keep in mind, it is nearly 3 a.m., and even the pub we were at was not technically open anymore. They just let us in because we worked at the other pub. I did not think much of him at first, until I realized I had served him earlier that night. He looked up and I noticed he was sniffing some kind of drug, most likely cocaine, off his keys. I did not actually know who he was, and I still do not, but he did not look threatening, just oddly relaxed. Then he asked, "Sorry, darling, do you have a lighter I can borrow?" I was smoking as I walked, so he knew I had one. I stopped and started digging in my bag for a lighter. I was fully planning to just hand it over and leave. Then he asked me for a cigarette, but I had just lit my last one, so I told him that. During this whole interaction, he was very close to me, and I kind of froze. I suddenly realized I had stopped in a dead street, alone, with a man at 3 a.m. I started mumbling, "Keep the lighter, I have to go." But he told me, "Just stop a second." And even though I had started to turn away, I stopped again. And then his whole demeanor switched. He looked me up and down and said, "You know, I've been real angry, and I've been waiting for someone to hurt all night. You shouldn't be walking around here alone." My legs literally turned to jelly. I looked around and said, "I'm not alone. My boyfriend is waiting around the corner. I'll be with him in a minute." And I smiled. A complete lie. My boyfriend was still at the pub and had no idea any of this was happening. The man smirked like he knew I was lying and said he would walk with me to meet my boyfriend. There was no boyfriend waiting. I kept saying there was no need, but he stayed right on my tail, rambling, telling me I did not understand him, that I needed to walk with him, and that he was not going to hurt me. The entire time I kept thinking he was going to grab my hair or pull me to the ground, and any second he would realize there was no boyfriend. I pulled my phone out and typed a message in our work group chat about a man walking with me, and that is when I realized my phone was on 2%. I did not dare call anyone. He started mumbling about how I was not listening. When we turned onto my street, somehow he still did not call my bluff, but he got worse. He started saying perverted things, calling me a pretty young girl and saying, "I bet your boyfriend doesn't know how to handle you." I was not speaking, just speeding up and checking my phone discreetly. Then I realized something else. He was going to see exactly where I lived. So I picked a random house with a light on, opened their gate, turned to him and said, "This is me. See ya. Thanks for walking me." And I closed the gate behind me. I ran up to their door and shoved my key into a door that was not mine, praying he would just leave. Thankfully, he did. He stumbled back down the street, away from where my actual house was. The second he turned away, I opened the gate and sprinted home. The worst part? When I got to my real door, my dad had left his key in the lock on the inside, so I was locked out. My phone had died. I just started banging on the door until he finally opened it. Nothing physical happened, but it was absolutely terrifying. I have not walked home alone since. My boyfriend was so upset he did not push harder to walk me home. So, random guy who told me he had been waiting to hurt someone all night. Please, let's never meet again. This happened a few years ago when I was about 13, living in the south of France. It is not the most horrific story you will ever hear, but it still disturbs me to this day. Every afternoon after school, I would take the bus to my little sister's elementary school to pick her up. She was 9 at the time. We lived in a small, affluent village outside the city, quiet, pretty, and known for being very safe. Our house was built on a hill. To get home, we had to walk up to the top and then take a long, steep road going downhill. In winter, it gets dark early, and that road was almost completely unlit. One lamppost at the top, then basically pure darkness. That day felt normal. My sister and I were laughing and chatting like always. We'd taken that path for years, so there was no fear at all. But when we reached the top of the hill and started walking down, something suddenly felt wrong. Cannot explain it properly. It was like my body knew something and my mind had not caught up to yet. I turned around. There was an old female walking behind us. I knew almost everyone in that neighborhood, and I had never seen her before. What struck me immediately was how fast she was walking. Far too fast for someone her age. I was absolutely sure no one had been behind us before. When she noticed me looking, she smiled. It was not friendly. Something about it made my stomach drop. I did not say anything to my sister. I did not want to scare her. I just kept walking, trying to act normal. Our house was only about 300 meters away. Then, without explaining anything, I said to my sister, "Run." She looked confused, but she trusted me. We both started sprinting. I glanced behind us and my blood went cold. The old female was not just walking anymore. She was almost running, and she was holding something in her hand, a knife. I do not even remember thinking. I just moved. I pulled out my keys, opened the gate, shoved my sister inside and slammed it shut behind us. I told my sister to go inside immediately while I stayed near the gate for a moment, shaking, trying to make sure the old female had not followed us in. That is when I saw it. The shadow of 2 feet under the gate. She was standing there. She could not get in. The fence was about 3 meters high, but I was terrified. A stranger with a knife had followed 2 kids all the way home. After what felt like forever, the feet disappeared. She left. I never saw her again. Years later, we moved to the United States. I never told my sister the truth about why we ran. She still does not know, but I know one thing for sure. If I had ignored that feeling, this story could have ended very differently. Here in the States, we have a store called Dollar Tree. My daughter used to love going in and just looking around. One afternoon, around the year 2006, we went in and were browsing casually. She was about 10 years old, so I would let her look down one aisle while I looked at the end cap of the same aisle, or I would be directly in the next aisle over. Every few minutes, I would step in and check on her. Suddenly, I noticed a tall man just kind of hanging around near us. He did not seem to be looking at anything. It was more like he was waiting. It set my senses off. Something about him gave me a weird vibe, so I went straight to my daughter and stayed right next to her with my hand firmly on her. She could tell something was off and looked at me but did not ask out loud. I tried changing aisles, staying in the same general area, and within seconds he would be right next to us again. I quietly told my daughter not to ask questions, but to follow me no matter what I did or where I went. Surprisingly, she did. Normally, she was full of questions about everything. She is autistic and likes to understand whatever is happening. I decided to cross the store to the opposite corner, and within a minute, he was behind us. I moved to another far part of the store. Same thing. I did this 4 or 5 times, stationery, grocery, makeup, and every time he ended up right where we were. I was nervous. I thought about telling an employee, but I was young and did not want to cause a scene. Eventually, I told my daughter the basics and told her under no circumstances to leave my side or let go of me. I was so freaked out that I decided we would just check out and leave. As soon as we got in line, the man got in the line at the register next to us, like he wanted to walk out at the same time we did. The second we finished paying, he headed straight for the door. I told my daughter to take my hand and not let go. I told her that when we got to the car, she needed to get in and lock her door while I got in. She did exactly that. I looked back, and yes, he was walking right behind us, far enough that we were able to get into the car before he caught up. We lived right down the street, but I took a longer route home to make sure we were not being followed. I do not know what his intentions were, but it felt sinister. Even now, almost 20 years later, I still feel sick when I think about it. So, creepy Dollar Tree man, let's not meet again. I met him in high school. At first it seemed harmless. We talked for a couple weeks, but I quickly realized something felt off. His face is disfigured, like Freddy Krueger, and I pulled back and tried to treat him like a friend instead. He did not accept that. He inserted himself into my social circle. He talked to my friends, former friends, anyone who would listen, spreading a false narrative about me. If I did not give him attention, he became verbally abusive. If I tried to set boundaries, he punished me for it. We lived in the same neighborhood and went to the same school, so avoiding him was nearly impossible. Over time, his attachment got more intense and more unstable. He followed me home once after being kicked out by his mother. I felt pressured into letting him stay nearby even though I was deeply uncomfortable. One night, after my friend accidentally sent him a blunt message telling him to stop trauma dumping, he responded by sending photos of recent self-harm. I was disgusted, but I still tried to half comfort this grown man who had the emotional regulation skills of a piece of bread. When I tried to cut him off, he escalated. He lured a young girl off an app called Yubo, lied that he was 17 and gave her chlamydia. When confronted, he tried to flip the story and act like he was the victim. Then he started trying to isolate me, luring me to places where no one else was around. More than once, he behaved inappropriately and tried to pressure me into sexual situations. I said no, clearly, explicitly, It did not matter. Eventually, we spent an entire day together running errands. Near the end, he started acting entitled to my belongings, telling me I owed him for his time. When I tried to leave, he got agitated, accused me of seeing someone else, grabbed at my clothing and tried to stop me. I locked myself in a public bathroom for nearly an hour while he waited outside. I was terrified. I texted my family begging someone to come get me. My brother arrived first, and only then did he leave. After that, the harassment turned vindictive. He gave my personal information to unsafe people, and I started getting threatening messages. When I confronted him, he claimed I was mentally unstable and tried to paint me as the abuser. Then the messages multiplied. He contacted me from dozens of numbers, sending disturbing images, threats, and cryptic messages. He even showed up at a neighbor's house because he thought I lived there, and he waited on their porch for hours. He harassed my neighbors too, because he was not sure where I lived, leaving weird gifts like cat food and water buckets. Then he involved my family. He spammed my mother with graphic images and non-stop calls until her phone became unusable. She had to change her number, wipe her device, and lost years of photos and data. He found my sister's number too. She had to change hers as well. We installed security cameras. We spent hundreds of dollars trying to protect ourselves from someone who would not let go. Eventually, I learned he had been hospitalized and diagnosed with severe mental health conditions. That did not undo the damage, and it did not make me feel safe. I was just trying to be kind to someone who seemed lonely. I learned the hard way that kindness without boundaries can be dangerous. So did the guy who turned my life and my family's lives upside down. Let's not meet, ever. I read a lot of these, and I thought maybe I should share one I have. This was in June 2019. I was a 19-year-old female at the time. I went to visit my best friend, we will call her Kelly, at her college, the University of California, Santa Cruz. A few of our hometown friends tagged along. We stayed at her apartment for a day before a bigger trip to Los Angeles. A group of us girls, plus some of Kelly's college friends, rented a minivan and drove about 6 hours down to West Hollywood. There were 7 of us total. The trip was going really well. Malibu Beach, breakfast at the Belvedere Hotel, hiking to the Hollywood sign. The first 2 nights were joyful, and so was most of the last night, until late. Before I continue, here is the Airbnb setup. It was in a sketchy area. There was a shed in the backyard we were not supposed to go into, overgrown plants everywhere, and a high chain-link fence around the property. You had to enter a padlock code at the driveway gate to get the key. It was a 1-story place with 3 bedrooms. There was a glass window front porch where we hung out a lot, and yeah, we would smoke weed out there. The back porch was similar but more beaten down. We kept both doors locked at all times, and the driveway gate locked too. On our last night, Saturday, we were on the front porch when we heard the chain and padlock jingling at the gate. There was a lot of brush, so we could not see, but I remember all of us retreating inside for a bit, then working up the courage to go back out. A bunch of us went to bed early because we had to wake up early to drive back to Santa Cruz. Some of them also needed to study for finals. I went to bed around 11:30 p.m. Another friend, Gabby, was the last to go to sleep around 1:30 a.m. Kelly stayed awake talking to her crush on FaceTime. I had been asleep for a while when one of the girls woke me up in a panic. She begged me to come to the living room because they thought there was something in the house. I will be honest, at first I was annoyed. I did not understand the desperation yet. I walked into the living room and everyone was there except one girl who was still sleeping. They were whispering over each other, trying to explain, and I said, kind of harshly, "If you really think something is going on, why don't you call the cops?" And they all shushed me. I stayed quiet for maybe 5 seconds, and then I heard movement in the kitchen, like someone shifting cups or putting something in the sink. My heart dropped. I jumped up so fast I will never forget it. I gathered everyone into one bedroom, woke up the last girl. She was annoyed and I had to be firm, and we all went into another bedroom. We shoved a chair under the door. Me and one other girl stood by the door, just listening. Everyone was fear-pacing, crying, struggling to breathe, going silent. I was trembling. Kelly was on the phone with the police. The girl guarding the door with me told me what started it. Kelly had been on FaceTime and started hearing sounds in the bathroom. drawers opening, cosmetics moving around 3 a.m. Kelly thought it might be me and called my name. That woke Gabby, and then everyone else got up. At first they thought maybe it was an animal, so they banged a water bottle on the doorway and yelled to scare it off. Nothing stopped. That is when they woke me. The police took forever. When they finally arrived, they said they could not enter unless we let them in, which caused another problem because we did not want to go out there. Eventually, the other door guard got the courage to open the door and let them in. 2 female officers came inside. You would think they would understand our fear, but they barely cared. They said they searched the home and saw nothing. They did not ask questions. They were not curious. They just wanted to leave, and they kept glancing at the weed on the table like they thought we were imagining it. We asked if they searched the backyard because there was that run-down shed, and they were hesitant, like it was a hassle. They left. Kelly looked at us and said, "I don't know about you, but there's no way I'm sleeping here tonight. I want to leave right now." We all agreed instantly. It was around 4 a.m. We packed our stuff and left for the 6-hour drive back. For the next couple days, it was the only thing we could think about. At one point, Kelly broke down crying because she had been holding it together for all of us. We never got a real answer. The most sensible explanation is that someone, maybe a homeless person, broke in and was going through our stuff. Maybe they were high. Maybe our yelling didn't scare them. But I still think about what would have happened if we had just walked into the kitchen. That experience messed with me for a long time. I became obsessive about locking doors and checking windows. I kept a bat under my bed. And ever since then, I always bring a portable door lock to Airbnbs. I do not know who or what was in that house, but I never want to feel that kind of fear again.